Today, the biggest World Cup in history begins. 48 nations. 3 countries. Billions of eyes on the brightest stars of the game, the mansions, the contracts, the private jets. But rewind far enough, and the picture changes completely. A boy shining shoes at a train station because his family can't afford dinner. A boy kicking a ball made of rolled-up socks because a real one costs a week of his father's wages. A boy born in a refugee camp, learning to dribble barefoot in the dust between tents. Here's the most beautiful secret in football: almost none of the legends started with anything. The World Cup, this giant, glittering, global festival, has always been built by kids who had nothing except a ball and a ridiculous dream. Today I'm going to tell you 7 true stories. 7 boys the world gave every reason to give up. And stay for the last one, because the boy who cried himself to sleep in a stranger's city is about to do something no footballer had ever done before: walk into a 6th World Cup, at 41 years old, in the tournament that starts today. Football writes better scripts than Hollywood. Let's begin. Brazil, the 1940s. In the town of Bauru, a skinny kid works shining shoes at the train station and selling roasted peanuts outside the cinema. His family is so poor that a real football is out of the question. So he makes his own on a sock, stuffed with newspaper, tied with string. His father, Don Dinho, was a footballer too, a good one, until a knee injury ended everything and pushed the family deeper into poverty. The boy watches his father cry the day Brazil loses the 1950 World Cup final at home. And he makes him a promise that sounds absurd coming from a 10-year-old with a sock for a ball: "Don't cry, Dad. I'll win the World Cup for you." 8 years later, in Sweden, a 17-year-old wearing the number 10 scores twice in the World Cup final. Brazil are champions of the world for the first time. The boy weeps on his teammates' shoulders. His name was Edson Arantes do Nascimento. You know him as Pelé. He kept his promise 3 times over, the only player in history to win 3 World Cups. And it all started with newspaper stuffed inside a sock. Here's the detail I love most. As a kid, his neighborhood team was nicknamed the Shoeless Ones, because most of the boys, him included, played barefoot. The greatest footballer of the 20th century learned the game without boots, without a ball, and without a single excuse. Decades later, kings and presidents would queue to shake his hand. The Shoeshine boy outlived them all in glory. Croatia, 1991. War breaks out. In a village near Zadar, a 5-year-old boy's grandfather is taken away and killed. The family flees their home with whatever they can carry, and ends up living for years as refugees in a hotel crowded with displaced families. There's no garden, no pitch, no academy. So the boy plays football in the hotel car park, hour after hour, day after day, sometimes while air raid sirens scream over the city. The other parents worry about the bombs. He worries about his first touch. Coaches who saw him said the same thing for years: talented, yes, but too small, too thin, too fragile. One of Croatia's biggest clubs passed on him for exactly that reason. He just kept playing. That boy was Luka Modrić. In 2018, he captained Croatia, a nation of barely 4 million people, all the way to the World Cup final, and was named the tournament's best player. That same year, he won the Ballon d'Or, breaking a 10-year duopoly held by Messi and Ronaldo. Years later he said something that stays with you: he never wanted the war to define him, but it made him stronger, and it made nothing in football feel frightening ever again. And he wasn't done. At 37, an age when most players are long retired, he dragged Croatia to yet another World Cup semi-final in 2022, walking off with another medal. Scouts once measured his body and saw weakness. They forgot to measure the size of what was carrying it. Rosario, Argentina. A small family business, selling coal. Their son, skinny, fast, with legs like wires, helps out after school, hands black with coal dust, delivering bags around the neighborhood. The family barely scrapes by. Boots are a luxury, the bus fare to training is a real expense that has to be planned. And when the biggest club in the area finally comes for the boy, the transfer fee his little neighborhood club asks for isn't money. As the story has been told for years in Rosario, including by the player himself, the deal was settled with footballs. Around 25 of them. A future World Cup champion, valued in balls. That boy was Ángel Di María. And his career became a highlight reel of impossible moments, the winning goal in an Olympic final. The winning goal in a Copa America final at the Maracana. And in 2022, at the World Cup final, the greatest final ever played, many say, it was Di María who scored Argentina's second goal, in the match that finally handed Messi his crown. The kid who delivered delivered finals. Football remembers where he came from. So does he. And there's a twist most people don't know, football wasn't even the plan. As a hyperactive little boy, it was a doctor who suggested his parents put him in sport to burn off the energy. A medical recommendation, a cold yard, and 25 footballs, that's the complete recipe that produced one of the most decorated big game players of his generation. Sometimes destiny doesn't knock. It prescribes. São Paulo, Brazil, 2014. The World Cup is coming to the country, and in the working-class neighborhood of Jardim Piri, a 17-year-old grabs a paintbrush. Like thousands of poor kids across Brazil, he spends days painting the curbs and streets green and yellow for the festival, decoration work, neighborhood pride, a few coins. The photos exist. A skinny teenager kneeling on the asphalt, paint bucket beside him, getting the streets ready for a party he could only watch on television. He'd grown up without a father, raised by a mother who cleaned houses and kept for children alive on stubbornness alone. He played street football barefoot until the local pitch gave him a chance. For years later, that same kid walked onto the pitch in Russia wearing the yellow shirt of the Brazilian national team, a starting striker at the World Cup, at 21. His name is Gabriel Jesus. When the photos of him painting the street in 2014 resurfaced, they went around the world, because no scriptwriter would dare invent it. From painting the World Cup's decorations to wearing its most famous shirt, in one World Cup cycle. Football does this. No other sport does this. And if you want to know what kept him grounded, watch what he did with his first big goals in Europe, the phone celebration, pretending to call someone after scoring. He explained it himself, the call was for his mother, Dona Vera, the cleaner who raised for children alone and never let him quit. Every goal was a phone call home. Some players celebrate for the cameras. He celebrated for one woman watching in São Paulo. Bambali, a small farming village in southern Senegal. A boy loses his father at the age of 7. The village has no proper hospital, a fact that will mark him forever. His family wants him to study, maybe become an imam like his father. Football, they tell him, is not a future. At 15, he does something desperate, he runs away. He travels hundreds of kilometers to Dakar, almost alone, to try out for football trials. The family eventually relents when they realize what everyone in Bambali could already see, the boy is different. He arrives at trials in torn boots and shorts that don't fit, and outplays everyone wearing proper kit. One coach famously asked if he was lost. He wasn't lost. He was exactly where he meant to be. That boy was Sadio Mané, Champions League winner, African Player of the Year, the man who fired Senegal to the World Cup and to its first Africa Cup of Nations title. When he stepped up to take the winning penalty in that final, an entire nation stopped breathing at once, and in Bambali, his village, they watched him on screens powered by the very projects his money had built. But here's the part that makes his story the purest in modern football. With his money, he built Bambali a hospital and a school, and funds families across the village. When asked why he doesn't collect supercars and diamond watches, his answer became legendary. Why would he want 10 Ferraris when his people needed schools and hospitals? He had been the boy with nothing. He never forgot what nothing felt like. This next story ends, quite literally, today. Buduburam refugee camp, Ghana, in the year 2000. Tens of thousands of people displaced by Liberia's civil war live here in tents and shacks. A baby boy is born, a child of war, with no country to call his own. His parents had fled unspeakable violence, now they queue for food rations and pray for a way out. When he's 5, the family is resettled to Edmonton, Canada, a cold, unfamiliar country on the other side of the world. His parents work brutal shifts, his father in a poultry plant, to keep the family afloat, and the boy grows up translating documents for them because he learns English first. Then he discovers football. By 14, he's playing professionally. By 18, Bayern Munich, one of the biggest clubs on earth, pays a record fee for him. He becomes, by most accounts, the fastest defender in world football. And he never forgets the camp. As an adult, he becomes a global ambassador for the UN Refugee Agency, the first professional footballer to take that role, speaking for the kids still living where he was born. In 2022, in Qatar, he scores Canada's first goal in the history of the Men's World Cup. His name is Alphonso Davies. And today, right now, a World Cup kicks off in Canada, the United States and Mexico. The boy born stateless, in a refugee camp, gets to play the biggest tournament on earth, at home, in front of the country that took his family in. From a tent in Budubaram to a home World Cup in 26 years. If football has ever written a more beautiful full circle, I haven't found it. And so we arrive at the final story, the one I promised you at the start. The island of Madeira, Portugal. A tiny house in one of Funchal's poorest neighborhoods. A mother who works as a cook and a cleaner. A father who works as a kit man at the local club, battling his own demons. For children sharing one bedroom. The youngest is so football obsessed that he skips meals to play, and his first clubs pay him in training gear and the occasional sandwich. At 12 years old, the family makes a brutal decision. The boy moves alone, across the ocean, to Lisbon, to chase a football contract. He's a child, in a big city, with an island accent the other kids mock mercilessly. He cries himself to sleep at night. He stays anyway. And at 15, just as his career was starting, doctors discovered a racing heart condition that required a procedure. For a few terrifying weeks, the family feared football was over before it began. It wasn't. You already know who this is. Cristiano Ronaldo. 5 Ballon d'Or trophies. The all-time leading scorer in the history of international football. The first man to score in 5 different World Cups. Whatever you think of him, and everyone thinks something, the facts are the facts. No player in history has extracted more from his own body for longer. And the engine underneath all of it was built in that one shared bedroom in Funchal, the absolute refusal to let where you start decide where you finish. And the story is still being written. The tournament starting today will be his 6th World Cup, something no player had ever reached before, at 41 years old, more than 2 decades after his first. The boy from the shared bedroom in Funchal, still out there, still hungry. Because that's the truth about the journey from nothing. For the ones who make it, it never really ends. 7 boys. A sock for a ball. A hotel car park. A bag of coal. A paintbrush. A pair of torn boots. A refugee camp. 1 shared bedroom. Not one of them was supposed to make it. All of them did. So over the next 5 weeks, when you watch this World Cup, watch it knowing what's underneath it. Behind almost every shirt out there, there's a kid who had nothing, a family who sacrificed everything, and 1,000 moments where giving up would have made perfect sense. That's what the world is actually celebrating today. Not the trophies. The journeys. And maybe that's why this tournament grips the whole planet like nothing else ever invented. The World Cup is the 1 month when a kid in Bogotá, a kid in Dakar and a kid in Manila are all watching the same screen, dreaming the same dream, at exactly the same time. Most of them will never play in one, that's true. But every 4 years, a handful of the names on those team sheets belong to kids who grew up exactly like them. Barefoot. Hungry. Told to be realistic. That is the door staying open. That is the whole point of the thing. If stories like these are why you love football, subscribe, because next on The Untold Game, the World Cup moments that made the whole world cry. The goals, the gestures, and the goodbyes that turned a football tournament into something much bigger. The whistle is about to blow. Somewhere, a barefoot kid is watching. Maybe in 30 years, we'll be telling their story. See you.